the young, and the restless spoilers. Sharon's breath came in short, ragged bursts as she stood in the dimly lit living room of Daniel's house, her trembling hands clutching a bottle of whiskey. The room was silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of a nearby clock, which only served to amplify the chaos brewing in her mind. Cameron's voice echoed in her head, coaxing her forward, urging her to carry out the deed she had come to do. Just pour it in. He deserves this, Cameron's voice whispered, the sinister tone filling her with an overwhelming sense of purpose. Sharon's gaze fixated on the bottle in her hands, which she knew was laced with a lethal poison. A grotesque fantasy began to unfold before her eyes, Daniel, lying lifeless on the floor, his face pale and cold as Heather and Lucy stumbled upon the horrific scene. They would scream, their voices filled with anguish and terror, but it wouldn't matter. Sharon would have her vengeance. The man responsible for Cassie's death would finally pay the ultimate price. For a brief moment, the thought brought her an unsettling thrill. Cassie, her beloved daughter, lost too soon, ripped from her life by circumstances Sharon had always blamed Daniel for. In her mind, this was justice. The cycle of pain would end tonight, with Daniel's death. But as Sharon uncorked the bottle, her hands still shaking, something within her began to shift. She hesitated, her conscience slowly clawing its way to the surface. This was not who she was. Sharon had made mistakes in the past, terrible ones, but murder? Poisoning a man in cold blood? That wasn't justice, it was madness. Her vision blurred with tears as she looked down at the bottle again. Her fingers loosened around the neck, and suddenly, with a loud crash, she hurled the whiskey bottle to the ground, shattering it into countless pieces. Glass scattered across the floor, the sharp sound reverberating in the small room, but it was the sound of her redemption. I can't do this, Sharon whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. I can't kill him. This isn't who I am. Cameron's voice, ever present in her mind, grew furious. You coward. He killed your daughter. You owe this to her. But the words began to fade, their power over Sharon weakening. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sharon found the strength to resist. She had to get out of here before the temptation returned, before Cameron's poisonous influence could tighten its grip once again. Without another thought, Sharon turned on her heel and bolted for the door, her heart racing as she reached for the doorknob. Freedom was just a few steps away, and with it, the hope that she could still find a way to atone for her mistakes without becoming a monster. But as she flung the door open, her escape was abruptly halted by the sight of Heather standing on the doorstep, her eyes wide with surprise and suspicion. Sharon froze, her heart sinking into her stomach as the two women locked eyes. Heather's sharp gaze darted from Sharon's face to the shattered bottle on the floor behind her, her expression hardening with each passing second. What are you doing here, Sharon? Heather's voice was cold, laced with an edge of disbelief. How did you get in? Sharon's mind raced, scrambling for an explanation that could somehow justify her presence in Daniel's home. She opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was too horrific to admit, and yet any lie would be just as damning. Sharon stammered, her voice trembling. Heather, I need you to move out of the way. I have to leave. But Heather didn't budge, her arms crossing defiantly over her chest. Not until you tell me what you're doing here. Why are you in Daniel's house? Panic surged through Sharon like a tidal wave. The walls felt like they were closing in around her, the weight of her guilt pressing down on her shoulders. She had to leave, had to escape before things spiraled further out of control, but Heather was blocking her only way out. And then, in that moment of desperation, a dark impulse took hold of Sharon. Get out of my way. Sharon shouted, her voice rising in panic. But Heather didn't move, her expression hardening into one of steely determination. What are you hiding, Sharon? What were you about to do? Heather demanded, stepping closer, her eyes narrowing. Sharon's mind went blank. Without thinking, she lunged at Heather, her desperation giving her a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The two women collided, a flurry of fists and snarled words as they grappled with each other in the doorway. Heather fought back, but Sharon's adrenaline-fueled assault was too much. In the chaos of the struggle, Heather stumbled backward, hitting the ground hard, momentarily stunned. Sharon stood over her, panting, her chest heaving with exertion and fear. For a split second, she considered helping Heather up, apologizing, explaining everything, but no.